Okay, so I found one more thing I wanted to share on this poetry and translation too. If you go to the homepage for the Odyssey and then you go all the way down past the books and you come to this index here, this is where you can find any person. So let's say Achilles was just mentioned in book 3. So you want to find out a little bit more about Achilles. So I think my internet connection is really slow because the boys are playing on the DS or something. Anyway, so it's not going to work for me right now. It's waiting for it. So that's where you can go to find more information. Oh, maybe it's going to work after all. It's maybe coming. Yes. Okay. So you have all the characters from the Odyssey who start with an A. And there's Achilles. So right there, the Greek hero, the Trojan War, son of Peleus, king of Thessaly, and the sea goddess Thetis. And so we find out how he's significant and what happens. So we know that his ghost is going to appear a couple times if we look through that. Okay, so back to the actual book 3. Maybe we'll do a new slide. And get rid of all these notes. All right. So picking up at, let's see, it is 1, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Line 115 on page 38. Our losses then, so many good men gone. Ares, great Ajax lies there. Achilles lies there. Patroclus, too, the wondrous counselor, and my own strong and princely son. Antilochus, fastest man of them all, and a born fighter. Other miseries, and many we endured there. Could any mortal man tell the whole story? Not if you stayed 5 years or 6 to hear how hard it was for the flower of the Achaeans. You'd go home weary and the tale untold. Think, we were there 9 years, and we tried everything, all stratagems against them, up to the bitter end that Zeus begrudged us. And as to stratagems, no man could claim Odysseus' gift for those. He had no rivals, your father at the tricks of war. Your father? Well, I must say, I marvel at the sight of you. Your manner of speech couldn't be more like his. No one would say no. No boy could speak so well. So, an important little item there. Telemachus is having a bit of an identity crisis as we meet him, and he's wondering if he's really his father's son. So, this is comforting. Nestor says he looks and sounds like Odysseus. So, that's good news. Yep, he's daddy's son. And all that time at Ilion, he and I were never at odds in council or assembly. In other words, they got along well. Saw things the same way, had one mind between us in all the good advice we gave the Argives. But when we plundered Priam's town and tower and took to the ships, God scattered the Achaeans. And this is interesting. There's an uppercase G, God, as if he has become a Christian and is talking about the one true God versus referring to one of the Greek gods. Anyway, he had a mind to make homecoming hard for them, seeing they would not think straight nor behave, or some would not. So evil days came on them, and she who had been angered, Zeus's dangerous gray-eyed daughter, did it, starting a fight between the sons of Atreus. First, they were fools enough to call assembly at sundown, unheard of hour. The Achaean soldiers turned out soaked with wine to hear talk about it from their commanders. Menelaus harangued them to get organized. Time to ride home on the sea's broad back, he said. But Agamemnon wouldn't hear of it. He wanted to hold the troops, make sacrifice, a hecatomb. Remember, that's 100 oxen. Something to pacify Athena's rage. Folly again to think that he could move her. Will you change the will of the everlasting gods into a night or a day's time? So again, this idea of fate that once the god or goddess decides something, there's nothing you can do. Whereas if we look at the Old Testament, for example, when God is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham argues back and forth and says, would you save it if there are 100 people, 50? And he keeps going down. And so that we see that there's a dialogue going on back and forth. instead of just the Greeks' view of God, their gods, that they are unmovable and you can't sway them in any way. Anyway. Folly again to think that he could move her. Will you change the will of the everlasting gods in a night or a day's time? The two men stood there hammering at each other until the army got to its feet with a roar and no decision, wanting it both ways. That night no one slept well, everyone cursing someone else. Here was the bane from Zeus. At dawn, we dragged our ships to the lordly water, stowed aboard all our plunder and the slave women in their low hip girdles. But half the army elected to stay behind with Agamemnon as their corps commander. The other half embarked and pulled away. We made good time, the huge sea smoothed before us, and held our rights when we reached Tenedos, being wild for home. So, in other words, after the Greeks got done fighting the Achaeans, they had a fight among themselves, and some went back, some stayed. But Zeus, not willing yet, now cruelly set us at odds a second time, and one lot turned, put back in the rolling ships under command of the subtle captain Odysseus. Their notion was to please Lord Agamemnon, not I. I fled with every ship I had. I knew fate had some devilment brewing there. Diomedes roused his company and fled too, and later Menelaus, the red-haired captain, caught up with us at Lesbos while we mulled over the long sea route, unsure whether to lay our course northward of Chios, keeping the Isle of Syria off to port, or inside Chios, coasting by windy Mimas. We asked for a sign from heaven, and the sign came to cut across the open sea to Euboea and lose no time putting our ills behind us. So they have another fight, and different people go different ways. Odysseus went back to Agamemnon, and Menelaus and Nestor start sailing for home. We asked for a sign from heaven, and the sign came to cut across the open sea to Euboea and lose no time putting our ills behind us. The wind freshened astern, and the ships ran before the wind on paths of the deep sea fish, making Geristos before dawn. We thanked Poseidon with many a charred thigh bone for that crossing. On the fourth day, Diomedes' company, under full sail, put in at Argos port, and I held on for Pylos. The fair wind, once heaven set it blowing, never failed. So, this, dear child, was how I came from Troy, and saw no more of the others, lost or saved. But you are welcome to all I've heard since then at home. I have no reason to keep it from you. So, in other words, with his journey, he didn't know what happened to Odysseus firsthand. But now, as different people have come through, they've given him updates. The Myrmidon spear fighters returned, they say, under the son of lion-hearted Achilles, and so did Poeas' great son, Philoctetes. Idomeneus brought his company back to Crete. The sea took not a man from him of all who lived through the long war. And even as far away as Ithaca, you've heard of Agamemnon, how he came home, how Aegisthus waited to destroy him, but paid a bitter price for it in the end. So now Nestor is talking about all the other folks who fought in the Trojan War and made it back. That is a good thing now for a man to leave a son behind him, like the son who punished Aegisthus for the murder of his great father. You too are tall and well set up, I see. Be brave, you two, so men in times to come will speak well of you. So there is this sort of side story that's going to get referred to a lot. Agamemnon was killed by Aegisthus, and his son got revenge. It was actually Agamemnon and Agamemnon's wife and Aegisthus who plotted against him. So this is kind of a hinting, Telemachus, there's going to be trouble ahead. Then Telemachus said, Nestor, pride of Achaeans, Neleus' son. That was revenge, and far and wide the Achaeans will tell the tale in song for generations. I wish the gods would buckle his arms on me. I'd be revenged for outrage on my insidious and brazen enemies. But no such happy lot was given to me or to my father. Still, I must hold fast. So he wishes that he could get revenge against all those suitors.